Everybody, the webinar will begin very shortly. We're just going to take a few moments to let everybody join the call. So good afternoon from London, everybody. But I know we have people joining us from many different countries today. So good morning, good afternoon, or maybe even good evening, where you are joining us from today. And welcome to our webinar, which is looking at how governments can boost productivity with AI. So moving from the kind of hype to producing real world results. I'm Siobhan Benita. I'm a former UK civil servant. I'm delighted to be chairing this webinar today on behalf of Global Government Forum that works with civil servants all around the world. And I'd also like to thank our knowledge partner today, which is SAS. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our four fantastic experts for today. But just in terms of that topic, there are plenty of predictions on how governments around the world, the potential for them to save large amounts of time and money using AI, whilst also improving the services to the public that they deliver. But for many officials, we know this from the events and that we do throughout the year, I think it's safe to say that the topic of AI and how it's used can be quite daunting, a little bit overwhelming, even just knowing where to begin. So today we're going to be discussing how governments and their organisations are deploying AI to achieve real results, including some of those key areas where AI could be used to boost productivity in government, and including how to identify those areas, how to prepare the foundations for AI in government and in today and in the future, including how do you make sure that you have the skills in the workforce that you need, ensuring your data is ready, those kind of issues, and then how to manage risk and monitor the results to understand what's working and help you scale up the use of AI. As I say, we've got four brilliant speakers with us here today, and I will in a moment introduce our speakers, and then I'm going to ask each of them a question, and we're going to get straight into a conversation. But because we want this to be a conversation and we really do want it to be a discussion with you, the audience, we want to make this as interactive as possible. From any point from now on, please do message in your questions and your comments. Don't wait till the end. There should be somewhere on your device, you should see a Q&A function. Please use that to message in your questions. If our experts are saying something you want to come back in on, send in your question and we'll come to those throughout the conversations. We won't just hold all of those till the end and make it feel as interactive as possible. So in terms of our four experts today, we've got Yvan Gauthier, who is a Senior Research Officer at the National Research Council of Canada's Digital Technologies Division, where he leads the AI Accelerator for the Government of Canada. Before joining the NRC, Yvan worked for 20 years as a defence scientist with the Department of National Defence, where he became the first ever director there of data science. He's also chaired a NATO specialist team on advanced analytics and AI and has led several operational research projects whilst being embedded with various branches of the DND and the Canadian Armed Forces. Then we've also got Claire Mortimer, who is a partner at Deloitte, and Claire took up her current position at the start of 2024 from IBM, where she was a member of the UK senior leadership team. Claire has partnered with clients over more than 2 decades to deliver transformational programmes in Whitehall departments and the wider UK public sector. She's currently working in the central UK government, leading engagements to build sustainable services that embed AI in pragmatic, scalable and trusted ways. And she's really passionate about the cultural impact of evolving technologies and the need for them to be deployed on a solid foundation of ethics and trust. And I'm sure trust will be an issue we'll definitely come back to in our conversations today. And then we have Brecht Saifi, who is the lead advisor for European institutions at our knowledge partner SAS. Brecht started his career in analytics consulting, where he combined his passion for leveraging data with artificial intelligence and machine learning to improve the technological and sustainability capabilities of large public sector organizations. And today, as the lead advisor for the European institutions at SAS, Brecht helps them to become more data-driven by translating their business needs into analytics and AI solutions that can help them to improve policy design, efficiency, and implementation. And then last but by no means least, we've got Robin Atwood, who is Head of Applied Innovation within the UK Government's Communications Service, which sits right at the heart of the government in the Cabinet Office, where he leads their ambitious programme to responsibly harness emerging technology and data for the public good. In his role, Robin spearheaded the ethical use of data, AI, and technology within government communications, and currently he's leading the development and rollout of a bespoke generative AI tool for the government's communications profession, which I'm sure we'll hear more about, and he's embedding a culture of innovation across GCS. Before joining the Cabinet Office, Robin worked at a global media agency. So we do have four great experts with us here today. As I say to you, the audience, please use this opportunity to ask whatever questions you would like and put your questions and comments to our experts. So do get those coming in. So let's kick off with our first question. And Ivan, I'm going to come over to you first in Canada. So can you just give us a sense, what does the AI Accelerator do in Canada, and who are the types of people who are coming to you for support? So what are the most common things they're asking for help with in terms of their kind of digital transformation programs and how they use AI?
Thanks, Siobhan, and hi, everybody. So first thing I need to mention is that the Accelerator is part of the National Research Council, and at the National Research Council, we have a digital technologies division with over 150 experts in various areas of digital, including AI. And we've been supporting the private sector and the public sector in that space for over 30 years. So AI is really not new to us. But with the Accelerator, what we want to do is basically leverage all that expertise and experience that we have developed over the years and make it available to other departments who may just be starting in the AI space. And the mission of the Accelerator is to deliver solutions to these departments, solutions that are innovative. We don't want to repeat or reinvent products that already exist on the market. Because we are the National Research Council. We want to deliver solutions that are responsible, because that's super important in the government. We're dealing with citizens' data most of the time, and we cannot make any compromise on that. And more importantly, we want to deliver solutions that are impactful. So not purely research papers, but like solutions that will definitely help the departments with their digital transformation. Now, with respect to the kind of problems departments are coming with, they really vary and cover the broad spectrum of things. It's really hard to categorize them. But I would say that because we're talking about productivity today, if I had to categorize productivity in two buckets, I would differentiate between personal productivity problems. People have tasks as part of their daily jobs, and AI can help them with that. And we have developed tools to do that, especially using generative AI. But there's also the business productivity and the actual business processes that sometimes need to be transformed, and that often require a different type of approach. So I would broadly and loosely categorize use cases in these two buckets. For productivity, but there's also all kinds of other things that we do, because productivity is not the only thing in the government. There's all kinds of other benefits to AI that we may not discuss today, but things about situational awareness and improving services and doing science, for example, here at the NRC. So I'll leave it at that, but let's just say that we do a variety of use cases and projects.
Brilliant, thanks, Ivan. So really interesting to hear what you said, that you've been kind of supporting both the private and the public sector for quite a long time. And now through the Accelerator, you're taking all that experience and lessons learned and kind of helping departments with their solutions. And one of the things that people always ask us is, how can we get better at sharing lessons learned? And so kind of remove some of the duplication when people are trying things for themselves. So really good to hear that you're doing that. And then, as you say, that it kind of falls into two broad buckets, that kind of on productivity, improving those personal tasks that people do day to
Yeah.
day. And certainly we could maybe discuss some examples of that
Yeah.
later, but then also looking at the productivity for the business and kind of the whole
Yeah.
transformation of processes and everything. Thanks, Yvonne. Really good place for us to begin with there already. And then Claire, I'm going to come to you. So building on that, so you are currently, as I said, you're currently working with several central government departments in the UK. So from your perspective, can you give us an insight into how AI is being deployed there to improve productivity? And what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities for here?
For sure. And it'd be interesting to hear Robin's build on this later on. But so I spend most of my time working with colleagues in HMRC, so His Majesty's Revenue and Customs. So thinking around management of the border and tax from a customs perspective. But a little bit of my time working with the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, particularly around the safety side of the work that the UK is doing with AI. But the brilliant thing about AI as a topic is everybody wants to talk about it, which means I actually get to go and visit lots of different people, and not just in government. Because one of the things I think that's important for us to remember is that citizens who consume government services are the same citizens who do banking, who do walk into shops and do buying, and so actually their experience and expectations are built up from that whole range of experiences that they have. And where I see, the real focus around AI is very much in that experience side. Actually, it's how do we change the experience for the citizens, and that links in large part to, I think, a move certainly in UK government that I see of trying to move the relationship between government and the citizen to, I will say, allow rather than anything else, but encourage citizens to take responsibility. So if you look into healthcare, actually moving towards us as individual citizens managing our wellness rather than just using the NHS to manage illness. Similarly, if I look at it from a tax perspective, really empowering us to own and be responsible rather than having an enforcement perspective. And the same could be applied to justice. So using AI as a tool to change that citizen experience and make it easier for citizens to, and more intuitive for citizens to engage with government. And then actually also really, really importantly, I think changing the experience of colleagues who work in the civil service and provide all of those services, and the people who then engage with citizens to support delivery of those services. And I think one of the things that I find really interesting is, to Yvonne's point, actually, that the way that generative AI has really caught the public imagination, and people have brought that into work. And so they're now starting to question some of the processes that they've never thought of before. People are increasingly looking at, is there a different way to do? And so I think, unlike some of the previous technology rounds that we've seen, people are looking first at, oh, I wonder if I could do something with. Whereas previously, I think people have very much seen technology as a threat. And oh my God, I've got to do something with. So I think it's creating a real opportunity to look at how do we fundamentally change that experience. Fundamental change in government is always frightening, but I think it's definitely creating a lot of conversation at the moment.
Great, thank you. So you focusing much more on that, the kind of service delivery and how AI is being used to, as you say, to improve the customer experience. And a couple of things I think will resonate with the audience. So public expectations changing because they're seeing these technologies being used in other areas of their lives. So thinking, well, why can't I also have my government or my public services delivered in that more streamlined, efficient way? But I'm interested in whether the audience agree with what you're saying on, just because they're used to it being used somewhere else, do they trust the government to also be using AI? And I think the issue of trust and whether the government are going to be using their data in kind of secure ways, that's something that does come up quite a lot in our webinar. So maybe we can come back to that in the conversation afterwards. Yeah, thanks so much, Claire. Great. I'm going to come over to you now. So, I mean, as we've heard there from Yvonne and Claire, there's definitely a growing appetite, I think, in governments around the world. And both Yvonne and Claire were saying it kind of spreads across government departments. There's no one policy area, I think, where AI is more popular than others. But do you think that the public sector has the foundations in place to deploy AI effectively and safely? And what are kind of the success criteria, do you think, that need to be there for governments to be able to do this properly?
Mm-hmm. Well, with SAS, we actually started to support European institutions about 5 to 6 years ago by putting AI models into production. And what we could see there, that one of the most important things to start with it to have, because in the end we are counting upon data, is a very good and robust data foundation. Knowing your data, having a good view on what are the potential outliers in your data. Could there be some kind of bias already in your data? That is a very important first step, having a very good data quality check framework before a model can be trained upon it. So that's the first step, I would say. Then, of course, it's kind of looking for a tangible use case which addresses a challenge. And what we saw 5 to 6 years ago, we had a very tangible use case, like, hey, this is something we are collecting huge amounts of data from the member states. So the European Union consists of 27 member states. There is always a kind of skepsis, of course, when a country gives its data to a supranational entity. So this data needs to be treated with a lot of respect and attention. But then, of course, when that data was collected, you have a large amount of data, and then you can ask you the question, with the combination of these data of the 27 member states, we have a viewpoint of, for example, trade data, which goods are coming into Europe. Then, of course, we decided, out of this specific data set, we can receive some valuable insights, things that are not detectable by the naked eye. This is so tangible use case, and when we applied that model, we could see some very interesting trade patterns, for example, that before were just not recognizable. Then, of course, this model worked. After a couple of years, we saw, hey, there is a new use case, but there could be a geopolitical tension, something that shifts trade flows. And then, of course, we say, hey, could we build our model with all the knowledge that we gathered, and we could focus on this specific use case? So what I want to say is, actually start small, and in the end, if you can scale with high impact use cases, I think that is a real thing that I could definitely advise to work towards, and not let's do something. What is the tangible use case and which problem did we try to solve? So that is definitely something which I would recommend, and also the ethical aspect of it, because you are coping in public servants, public data. We are coping with sensitive data. So we need to see that there is a kind of trust in the data that we use. And what we also define is, as we all know, there is a nutrition model for our food. We try to have a nutrition model a nutrition score, for models. Because in the end, we call it the GIGO principle. It's garbage in, garbage out. So we need to see that whatever data we work with is from a decent quality, but also the model that is trained upon a data set. This data set is not the data set when the model has been deployed. So people change, data changes. So it is a never-ending story of continuously tracking what is happening with the data, with the model, and when the model has put into production. So that continuously monitoring and see whether everything is auditable, traceable, and explainable, that's already a very important step in that direction, I would say.
Greg, thank you so much. And lots in there to unpack, I think. So definitely, as you said, one of the foundations, this is something we discuss quite a lot in Global Government Forum, the need for good data. Your data has to be quality data. And as you say, there could already be problems with the data. You don't want to bake in bias into kind of the way you use these new technologies. I think for the audience as well, how do they know? They need to be clear on the problem they're trying to solve before they then reach for something like AI. So what's the problem they're trying to solve, and how do they gain the insight from all of that data that they are now gathering? Start small. I like what you say there. Start small, because I think people are feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of this. Start small, learn from that, and then scale up. I think that's a really good point in terms of some of the foundations. And then, as you say, the ethical question is really important, and the importance there of tracking and monitoring how these new technologies are playing out once you deploy them, but also then making sure everything you do is traceable, transparent, and explainable, which could go to some of those questions of trust that I was mentioning when Claire was talking as well. So thanks, lots and lots to unpack. To the audience, please do any questions you've got, get them coming in, because I'm going to put a final opening question to Robin. So Robin, you're slightly different. So you're head of applied innovation within a profession. So you're head of the UK government's communication service. So I'm really interested in understanding, how is AI being applied across that profession? What do you see as being kind of the benefits for the profession, but also maybe what are some of the common challenges that you're experiencing?
Yeah, thank you. And it's great to be with you all today. And yeah, I just really, I think those brilliant points just shared there about things that we could take away and immediately think about. So I'm sure we'll come back to speaking about a lot of those. I guess to answer that question, let me just start with explaining a little bit more about what the Government Communication Service is, because I'm sure many people haven't actually heard of it. So our role in GCS is to support the government to communicate its policies to the public and ensure the public can access and is aware of the vital public services that are available to them. So this can be everything to how to donate blood, how to recruit teachers or apply for a job in the armed forces, all the way through to the phrases that I'm sure we've all heard of, such as stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives. So there's a real spectrum of communications there that we deliver. And in order to deliver government communications, that's done by over 7,000 government communicators all over government in different departments, focusing on different policy areas. And as anyone who has worked in communications and marketing will tell you, there's a whole spectrum of skills, expertise, and talents that's needed. So everything from press and PR to strategic communications to data and insight, and lots of others as well. So in my role as head of applied innovation, my job is to explore how we can leverage emerging technology and data, like AI, to fulfill that mission and deliver on that mission. And ultimately, what we're doing at the moment is trying to put the benefits of AI in the hands of government communicators, but doing so in a way that's secure and responsible. And we can, I'm sure, through this call, get into what both of those terms mean. And the way we do that is both how we deliver government communications, so in our day-to-day roles behind the scenes, the processes we do, but also how we can use things like generative AI within official government communications to help us deliver those and create compelling and engaging communications. And the benefits that we identified when we were looking at this particular technology, generative AI, was that it can help with roles right across the profession, and right across those 7,000 roles, and right across those disciplines. So that's everything from things like content generation and drafting first drafts of either communications content, or it could be opening up thinking through using AI to help us explore new opportunities or challenges from a diverse range of perspectives, which is incredibly helpful if you're working in a very small team and don't have access to lots of different types of professional disciplines. Generative AI can help us develop strategy and explore and test new types of strategy, and do so in a way that's very cost effective and a lot quicker. And done right, it can also help us surface in a more consistent way data and insights across multiple organizations, breaking down organizational silos, and enable to get the most out of the rich veins of data and insight that we already have access to. And it's with those kind of benefits in mind, we have developed an in-house conversational AI tool that we've called Assist. So Assist uses large language model technology and makes that available through a tool similar to those who are familiar with ChatGPT would expect, but it's for internal use only, aimed at government communicators, tailored for government communicators. And it allows people, it allows government communicators to use this technology in a responsible and secure way, in a way that's very accessible. And I can go into more of the information about that as we go through, but the impact that we're hoping to deliver within this fiscal year is unlocking the equivalent of £5 million worth of man hours through doing what we do in a more joined up, collaborative, and in an enhanced way by using AI to assist us in our roles, but keeping a human in the loop. And just to finish off, you mentioned, what are the challenges and concerns that people have when they're kind of encountering this technology, and especially in the workplace. Of course, lots of people are worried about the impact this is going to have on roles. And the discussion we're having within government communications is that we see AI really as an additive tool, not a reductive tool. It can help us do things better, quicker, more effective, rather than removing roles wholesale. And there are obviously challenges around bias in responses and accuracy, and that's why, alongside digital tooling, we've also published a generative AI policy for government communications and an ethical framework for government communications, so that government communicators can assess themselves whether their intended application of AI is in line with both our ethical values as an organisation and our principles as civil servants, but also in line with our policy that states black and white and is publicly available, where we will use it and where we won't use it and why.
Really interesting, Robin. So, I mean, I've got loads of questions on that already, but interesting to hear what you said, that, this of the 7,000 kind of government communicators that you have in a whole host of different kind of roles, that AI there's probably something for all of them in terms of how AI can be used. And you mentioned a couple of areas there. So content generation, first drafts, producing kind of first drafts, developing strategy and testing new strategies, helping to break down silos. That's really interesting, because I think that's one of the things that people really struggle with most, is how can you collaborate more and get that information across government departments. I really like the fact it's called Assist, the tool that you've produced yourself. So it's kind of highlighting that you still need the human there, and this is an aid, not a replacement to the human in that process. I want to come back to you immediately on this, Robin, and to the audience, please do send any questions you've got. But I'm just curious why you developed your own tool rather than kind of using maybe one of the tools that are already available. And also, in terms of the guidance that you've produced specifically for the profession, how does that fit with wider? Because there must be, I'm sure there's government guidance already on the use of AI. So what did you feel you needed to add to that for the profession itself?
Yeah, and just on the naming, Copilot was taken, so we had to think of something that was similar, but not trademarked. So why did we build ourselves? I mean, this is an important question for government. We need to be responsible stewards of taxpayers' money and use that in the most cost-effective way. So the whole build or buy is always a question we're thinking about. And we were very specific in that we wanted to create a tool that would help a very specific audience, that's government communicators within government. And therefore, we needed to do so in a way that has the necessary safeguards and protections around it that enable it to be secure, just from a data sharing point of view, but that also provides responses that are incredibly tailored to our unique world of delivering government communications, which anyone who's worked in it will tell you is a wild ride. But what we wanted to do is make sure that we do those two things. And looking at our options, we identified a very cost-effective way of developing a single tool here at the centre of government that then government communicators across the piece could access and draw down from. That way we can ensure that everyone's using this technology in an authorised way, and that those safeguards that we're putting in place are being done in effect once and they're not being replicated in various different ways, department to department. Obviously, it's more cost-effective doing that as well, providing one tool for many rather than letting 1,000 blossoms bloom. And on the guidance, one thing we were conscious of, and that we've outlined in more detail in our Innovating with Impact strategy on our website, is not just dumping a new technology in people's laps. So we knew that when we're developing digital tools, we also need to provide a policy that kind of outlines in a publicly accessible way when and where it's okay to use that, or how we'll use that, and also providing a clear steer on what ethics actually means. We all talk about ethics, but what does that mean when we want to apply it to our work? And again, being at the centre, we could develop those things. So there's an ecosystem there of tooling, guidance, and policies to help people do the doing, but also govern us doing that in a responsible way.
Great, thanks, Robin. And if anybody, if Yvonne, Claire, or Brett, if you want to come in on kind of bespoking some of the tools versus, Yvonne, coming in.
I really like Robin's example, because this is also something we have done at the NRC for ourselves. I have colleagues who have developed basically an internal version of ChatGPT, because there's a need for that. You were asking why not use ChatGPT or Claude or these things. You can use these tools, and we have guidelines as to when it's appropriate to use commercial tools. But as soon as you get into more sensitive data, intellectual property, that sort of thing, you basically need another tool set. And that's why we made the choice of having our own internal tool. We call it AI Zone, but it's different. Maybe the difference, or I don't know if Robin is also doing it on their side. On our case, it's not just a chatbot, it's going to become as well the engine of multiple other applications leveraging generative AI on top of it. So, for example, our client service center may have all of their frequently asked questions, loaded into the tools, and people will be able to ask not only general questions that can be answered by what the model has been trained on, but also our own data, and let's say our intranet data, being feeding the thing and being able to answer typical questions that NRC employees will have. So when I was talking about two types of productivity, like the personal and the business side, like there's a lot of things you can do with generative AI to improve the productivity of people in their daily task, and that kind of tool set is super. It's a critical to that kind of enablement.
Thanks, Yvonne. We've got great questions coming in, but Claire, you've got your hand up on this point in particular.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. So we've within Deloitte we have our own tool. We haven't built our own large language model from scratch. We use other people's models. What we've built is then a series of either prompts, so kind of pre-written, but tailor for what you want, or actual agents where it literally takes you stepwise through for some of those common processes. So again, for all of the good reasons that colleagues have described, but we have, what we've layered on is that that user interface, so it makes it easier for people to use. And we've also tested that out we work with Scope, which is a charity in the UK for people with diverse abilities, actually to get another layer of different types of users to help us build out and understand where we wouldn't normally find them. Actually, how do people find these tools useful? And that's been really helpful. We use it for our own people, but actually it's really helpful when we're working with clients, particularly in government, because they do have that need to kind of provide access to everyone. So we're trying to provide that into government as a set of experience.
Great, thanks, Claire. Just to say to the audience, if you raise your hand, I'm afraid because of the way this functions, I can't come to you if you raise your hand. So please do message in your question using the Q&A function. Brett, I'm going to come to you on the first couple of questions from the audience because they're both linked. I think they were both a response to something you said, Robin. So Sandra has said, what tools did you use and how did you quantify the savings in man hours? Do you have an estimated hypothetical time saving? And Lucy similarly has said, how was the 5 million of man hours calculated? So I'm going to broaden this out a little bit and just say generally, when you're talking about the use of AI, how would you go about that kind of starting to calculate the benefits in terms of hours saved? So Brett, I'm going to come to you, phrasing it slightly more generally.
Yeah, so the way we always consider, or if you need to make a case, is before actually, and I always go back to the use cases that we tackled at the commission, is that we see currently there was a whole FTE dedicated for looking in the data, finding irregularities, and then coming up with, hey, this is maybe something that we need to investigate. But guess what? There was a lot of these analyses take sometimes 1 year, 1.5 years, because you need to visit other plants and see whether the irregularity that we detected is actually an irregularity or not. Now, if you could already say, hey, this is the analytical proof that we see for that specific irregularity, and then you have a sound basis to say, hey, now you can spend your time on it. Because we shorten that whole distance, whereas otherwise, yeah, sometimes you investigate and it happens to be something which is normal behavior. So we try to factor that out. So all the time which is not spent on these cases is already a big win. And this is easy to quantify if you don't know in the past how many people that spend on cases that did not happen to be a valuable case to look at. Well, that's of course an easy calculation. So that's the way how we did it in the past.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brett. And I guess, Robin, I'm going to come to you on the specific one, because I guess what Brett is saying, there's so many different examples, and each one, I imagine, has to have its own calculation of how much saving could potentially be achieved from the use of AI in that area.
Yeah, this is one of the hardest challenges, but also one of the most important. And anyone who works, I was going to say in communications, but actually anyone who works in any kind of business organization knows that evaluation of your activity is one of the most important things. So we really embrace that with our work on AI. We put together, as part of our rollout of Assist, which now has over 1,000 users in over 120 organizations, we put together a plan called Adopt, Sustain, Optimize. And that's a behavioral science-led framework to guide our scaling of their technology. That includes, of course, an evaluation. And there's different ways to do that. It's what we call multimodal. So a lot of it, is qualitative. So feedback from users, we get them in focus groups, we understand both how they're using the tool and the time that it's saving them. And then we use that feedback to calculate, well, if this many roles are saving this many hours over this period of time, and doing those calculations. So that's how we got to that figure that I mentioned. But importantly, that qualitative evaluation is also really important for benefits that we hadn't expected. So talking to some of our colleagues who work in press and media, who do a lot of analysis of sentiment online and what the current narratives are in the public domain and how messages are landing. And to use a recent example of the far-right riots within the UK over the summer, there was a lot of quite heavy content that those individuals needed to kind of review just as part of their job. By being able, though, to share that burden with generative AI to perform some of that sentiment analysis, it reduced the cognitive burden on those individuals and improved their well-being slightly. And this isn't something that we kind of went in to this initiative with an idea of a benefit we'd be able to deliver or at least understand. So I would say the best way to evaluate these tools is really get the users in the room with you, understand their needs, understand how they're using it, and get and factor that into your evaluation plan.
Thanks, Robin. Ivan, I'm going to move on to some other questions that are coming on. We've got one here which kind of links from this one. So part of the promise of AI is freeing up time, which we've just talked about. My question is, and this has come from Alvaro, my question is, how are you approaching the change in mindset around this so that we will fill the extra time but more effectively and meaningfully rather than just, I guess, with some of these routine tasks? So this is more how do you get the workforce ready, I think, for a different type of work in future if AI is kind of carrying the load of some of the repetitive stuff?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that AI is very good at either automating or simplifying the boring and repetitive task. And I could give you many examples of projects we've done where the end users were so happy because we were taking care for them of the things that they didn't want to do. For example, we did a lot of work around survey analysis, consultation analysis, internally, externally, and the amount of time that was spent by the people to just get the data ready for analysis, which is the important part for them. But just to get to that point was mind-boggling. And now we are automating all that, and we allow people to focus on the results of the data, and now they can focus on the action plans on the results and that sort of thing, and provide advice instead of just doing cut and pasting and this and that. And I could give you many examples of that where the data preparation, the gathering of information was taking 75%, if not more, of the time, and now it's freeing up time. That's just for the sake of freeing up time or giving more work to people, but just focusing on the actual important piece of work where the human is required. I think most employees that's what they want, and when they realize that AI can give that to them, they're much more open to that kind of solution.
So because one thing that we do get when we do events with AI, we do tend to get questions from people that are worried about the impact of AI on their jobs. So from what you were saying, do you genuinely think that people, when they understand what it's going to be, they're going to be pleased with the fact that they're going to be freed up to do more of the kind of thinking, I think
that people, some people still see AI as a threat, and as a potential replacement for them, but I think clearly it's more, they have to see that as an augmentation. It's like a power tool that can make them not only more productive, but just more creative, more maybe insightful in what they, and it's just a very powerful tool that they have at their disposition. And of course, people can say, I don't want to use it, but once you try it, it's hard to not use it.
To not use it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm coming to you, but I just want to go to France Lemieux. You've asked which tool is government allowed to use. Could you just tell us which government you're from? So where are you based? Because that would help in terms of answering that particular question. But Claire, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to throw in, there was a lovely phrase in a piece of research that was published by the University of Oxford around the use of AI and the increased use of AI. And the phrase, the comment that was used was, as more and more of our kind of interaction is automated with technology, so the pieces which are inherently human become increasingly important. And so I think as you do that shift, yes, we might take away some of that rather more mundane work, which actually sometimes is quite a nice thing to churn through after lunch. But also, actually, you're raising the quality of, if you're engaging with a citizen on a service, you're raising the quality of that conversation. We should, by using the tools to help to bring the right information quickly to the people who are dealing with those citizen services, actually, we should give more confidence that they're giving the right and complete information. So it should raise the quality of the interaction, and therefore nobody, I don't think, is certainly at the service delivery end, is sitting looking for something to do if they run out. I think it's just a different approach.
Thanks. Greg, did you want to come in at all at the kind of EU level on this sense of changing people's mindsets about what the future of work is going to look like?
Yeah, and it's actually also already a little bit anticipating on the next question, because in the end, we give a new tool at the disposition of civil servants. But then in the end, in order to use that tool properly, there are some rules that need to be played with. So what we developed is with SAS, we have an AI training that we developed for public sector, where we said, hey, if this is a specific case that you would like to tackle, we put people from the business that have a specific challenge that they would like to address with the people of IT, and the people of IT say, hey, we want to help you, but these are some of the rules, some of the things that you need to learn before we can do the thing that you would like to achieve. So with that one tangible use case, we're bringing these two parties together, and they say, hey, if you would like to use the Gen AI tool, then you need to follow some trainings. And if you unlock and succeed for that training, here you go. And then this is enabling a level playing field where everybody is able to play the game, but according to some very specific rules. And I think that's something which I would highly also advise, is not only having those rules in place, but also what is the underlying tool that we are using. Not everybody needs to be a data scientist, not everybody needs to be a data engineer, but just having a sense of this is the data that we are using, and this is the kind of techniques that are applied on top of that data, gives already a feeling on, hey, this is what we are doing, and is also creating a lot of creativity of the business users that are not that technical at all. And this is something, it's a kind of applying a common language between IT and business. And this is what we try to derive with that training, and we implemented already a couple of times at European institutions, which was a great benefit.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brett. I am going to come on to Brent's question about training in a mo. And just before I do that, though, Ivan, France has said they are in Ottawa, so they're based in Ottawa. Okay. So their question was, which tool is the government allowed to use? Is it just Copilot or ChatGPT?
So I would encourage France to go on the page of the Treasury Board Secretariat, where there is a nice guidance on the use of generative AI that was put together maybe a year ago or so. It was updated since then, and gives you the kind of, in that case, it will not mention tools specifically, but it will tell you the kind of guidelines and principles that you need to follow before deciding how to use some of these tools. That being said, some government departments went one step further and clearly, detailed which tools are usable for what. So I don't know about our specific department, but this is, these guidance exist, and I encourage her to have a look.
Yeah. So thanks, Yvonne. And then following on from what Brecht was moving into there, around training. So we've got two questions that have come in. So Francis' follow-up question was, how do I attend training? Again, I would look on the website, but I'm going to broaden this back out to Brent's question, which is what aspect of Gen AI requires the development of organizational training on, say, for example, parameters of use, ethics, time, effort, efficiencies, for example. I think the question here is, to what extent do you think, based on what Brecht was saying as well, that all civil servants should be doing some type of training on AI, and maybe that common language that Brecht was talking about, some kind of basic data literacy as well? So, Robin, you're nodding on this. Any thoughts on training that everybody's going to need, regardless of what profession they sit in?
I mean, short answer, yes. But I guess it's the right level, right? As Brett was saying. So in the UK civil service, we have modules, training modules available on Civil Service Learning, which is our e-learning platform that everyone can take. And then we've gone a step further within the Government Communication Service and developed our own training module called AI for Communicators that takes the technology from a high level, but really brings it down into focusing on the implications for someone who works in government communications. And one of my favorite examples of this is if you ask an AI tool, especially a large language model tool like ChatGPT, how many instances of the letter R are there in the word strawberry? It will say there are 2. We all know there are 3. If you understand why it's giving you that answer, why that's an inaccurate answer, at a very basic level, how the technology works, and can share that across your organization in a clear way, you're empowering people with confidence and knowledge about both what to look out for, but why it's important to look out for that, and you're using this particular technology. So I think everyone should seek out a certain basic level of understanding of how this technology works. And like Brad said, you don't need to be a data scientist to do that. There are some brilliant courses and YouTube videos online, but it's about raising the floor of knowledge so we're all on the same page rather than lowering the ceiling.
Thanks, Robin. You're going to leave us all hanging now on why it says there are 2 R's in strawberry.
I mean, without getting too complicated, the model knows of the word strawberry. It doesn't know that it's made up of the letters S-T-R-A.
Right.
It doesn't know the relationship between the letters. It just knows strawberry and the relationship to the previous and next word. That's a massive oversimplification, but it's the same reason why it knows that 3 comes after 2 and 2 comes after 1. It doesn't understand maths, but it knows the sequence.
Yeah, thanks. Claire, your thoughts on training. Is this something that you help departments with as part of the work you're currently doing?
So we do to an extent, but the big thing I would say, I think that the training around this is a huge opportunity to put together the 2 ends of the workforce. So you've got a bunch of people who know processes inside out. They know what they're doing, and they could do it in their sleep. And then you've got a bunch of people coming into the workforce who use these technologies whilst they're eating their breakfast, quite literally. And actually, it's a brilliant opportunity to to really buddy those people up. So we all think of training as, where's the module I can go and do? But actually, there's a huge amount of learning in this context, I think, which is a great opportunity to bring the workforce together and build everybody's confidence through the collective knowledge that there is within the workforce. And not to assume that everybody is coming from the same place.
Thanks, Claire. And Yvonne, the same question to you. Do you, as part of the work of the accelerator, do you advise departments on the type of training that they should be offering?
Not really on that, because in Canada, and I'm going to answer at the same time the question from France about how to get training. In Canada, we have the Canadian School of Public Service that is doing a fantastic job at building a curriculum of courses about AI, generative AI, but also digital at large as part of their digital academy. And I often direct people to the school because they have the mandate for delivering that kind of training, and they are doing a pretty good job at it as well.
Thanks. And just on this issue of kind of skills, we did have a question in advance, which was, whilst we're kind of building internally the capabilities on AI and the skills on AI, do you think we should be doing more to recruit talent externally or to partner with the private sector so that we can make sure we have the best skills possible shaping the use of AI in government at the moment? And is that even possible given the challenges of recruiting good digital talent into government? Ivan, you're nodding there on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussions in Canada about that at the moment, and I know that in the UK it has been discussed extensively as well. One thing I would mention, and we were having a discussion yesterday about that here, I would not separate the AI talent from the digital talent at large, because yes, there are definitely some challenges in terms of skill set. I would argue that there are more and more candidates that are coming out of school that are very qualified and willing to work for the government. It's probably more at senior level where the retention challenges and the attraction challenges are a bit more complicated. And as you said, there are probably different ways of attacking this, including interchange with industry and that sort of things. But I think we need to keep in mind that AI is not the only thing here. Like, you want to build digital at large, you need data specialists, you need IT specialists, you need all kinds of things, because otherwise you're going to attract very talented AI people who may not have quite the right infrastructure to work on, maybe part of projects that are slow moving for various reasons, and it will not solve the problem completely. So we need to have a look at this holistically and not just, in a silo, because everything is related. It's not just talent on one side and infrastructure on the other side and governance. Like, everything is interrelated. If you don't have the right infrastructure, you will lose people. If you don't have the right type of governance and everything is not moving because there's too much risk aversion, whatever, like, you're going to lose people. All these things are related, and you need to have a look at them holistically.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. Does anyone else want to come in on the question of talent before I move on to the next question?
I'll just share one experience. So one of the absolute most valuable people in my team was an English literature graduate, because whilst we were developing AI, she was surrounded by data scientists who'd studied computer science or maths or similar, and they understood exactly why it thought there were two instances of R in strawberry, but she understood how language was constructed. And when you're working with language and technology, those two skills are both equally powerful, and together, again, you can learn together. So I think we run the risk of being too narrow in our thinking, and forget that people will continue to learn and grow through their careers.
Thanks. Robin, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, just quickly, I just agree with everything that's just been said. And I think no one organization will always have all of the answers, and we can learn from each other. So even in the developing of our AI policy and ethical framework, we reach out to academia, the wider industry, other parts of government. You need to get that diversity of thought in place. And I agree with Ivan's point as well. It's not just on the technical side. You need to think about it holistically, and AI skills means the technical side is obviously very important, but there's a whole universe of different AI talents that we need to consider.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. I want to move on to the issue of, because you've all touched on it, and I think it came up in some of the questions as well, the issue of kind of ethics and safety. And I think this links also to trust. How do we make sure that the public trust government when it's using AI? And I guess my question is, there's obviously this appetite for using AI now. It's kind of everybody wants to use AI, ministers and officials. But at the same time, they need to balance that with making sure that it's done in an ethical way and it's done in a secure way, especially when you're dealing with sensitive issues and sensitive data. So how do you get that balance right? Like, what would your advice be to officials in terms of getting the balance between really wanting to be pacey in the adoption of these new technologies, but making sure they do it safely and securely? Brecht, this must come up because you kind of advise people a lot on the regulations around AI, don't you? So how do you advise people to be mindful of the regulations, but not let that stop them moving forward with the use of AI?
Yeah, it boils down to what we always propose as a kind of out-of-the-box solution, so that you know which data which is used, which model is used, and also tracking what the model is doing with always new incoming data. Now, when a decision has been taken on top of the results of an AI model, and it happens to be a wrong decision, yeah, then it starts to get tricky. So that's where the traceability and the auditability comes into place. So you need to know at all costs if the wrong decision has been made, on top of which data was it, and which were the techniques that were applied on top of the data to come to this specific result. This is important, especially if you're coping with sensitive data of citizens. This is definitely something to take into account. So I see the auditability, the traceability as a key component if you would like to industrialize AI. And if you would like to do, for example, data-driven policy making, I think that's kind of the holy grail of all the public institutions to automate things, but at any point in time to trace back to why a specific decision has been made. I think that's important. If you have all of the box tools that can provide you those insights, that you have something to work with and you have something to defend your specific decision. And that is, I think, key if one would proceed and operationalize the AI models, I would say.
Thanks, Brett. Robin, you were nodding at that. So in addition to kind of traceability and accountability, is there anything else that you think about in getting this balance right between safety, but also quick, pacey adoption?
Yes, I mean, on pace, I'd say our approach to enabling pace is by hopefully doing a lot of this thinking upfront centrally and then making that available to the rest of government so they don't need to duplicate that work and they have a North Star that they can use. I think that's how we're tackling that specific point. But I mean, the issue of trust is incredibly important at the moment, and trust in the institutions. The OECD has done some terrific work mapping trust levels in different countries. And we've got a lot of work to do in the UK to strengthen trust in government communications. So it's about how we do this and the approach we're taking. And, this is experimental. We're trying to learn. It's to be transparent and to be clear and explicit about what we're doing. So whether that's making sure that our policies and frameworks are accessible to the public is a great first step, but not using jargon, breaking that down, making that really digestible and just saying, look, we are going to use it here. We're not going to use it here. And if you want to know how we made that determination, well, that's because we have this thing called, for example, civil servants, the Civil Service Code, which governs how we do our jobs. So we're leaning on that to start setting out our ethical values and to guide our use and making sure that our use is in line with these ethical values we already have and that are well understood and well appreciated. So I think transparency is good, but you need to be clear about that as well. And so I think those are the main two ingredients, I'd say.
Thanks. Claire, I'm going to come to you on this same issues, and I'm interested, something Robin said there, we be clear on where you're not using it, because you also mentioned, I think, in your answer to the opening question, it shouldn't be AI just for the sake of AI. So I'm just wondering, in terms of this, can you do it ethically and can you do it safely? Are there instances where you say to people, no, actually, you just shouldn't be doing it here. You're not yet in the position to be doing it.
I mean, I think there will always be instances where you say that. I mean, so for us working with government, right, it's not our role to say you shouldn't do it. We can say these are the risks, right? And I think that's when you look at trust is a very emotive word. If you come back to words like confidence, and risk, actually, it's much easier then for us to understand what are we doing to build people's confidence and how do we articulate risk. And that reflects Robin's transparency and openness. If we can be clear about, what are the risks and what have we done to manage those, and allow that conversation as well. I think the other side of ethics, sometimes people immediately think bias when they hear AI. And I think it's a fascinating conversation that we could spend a whole webinar on, because AI is using history to predict and create a future. Now, that means if we're worried about bias, the bias is in our history. It isn't created by the machine. It's exacerbated perhaps by the machine, but it's not created by the machine. So actually, there are some really, really powerful conversations to be had about ethics in decision making, which actually, again, this technology is bringing to the fore. It's not creating the bias in itself.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. And Ivan, you wanted to come in on that.
Yes, and I agree with what my co-panelists have just mentioned. But I think at the end of the day, these questions are important, and you need a policy framework around that. You need some kind of directives. And in Canada, we've been lucky in the sense that my colleagues at the Treasurer Board have done a fantastic job since at least 2019, if not longer than that, to put a policy framework around the use of AI, especially for administrative decisions. So decisions that will impact Canadians, regardless of the technology that you're using. Could be deep learning or some simpler techniques. If you're trying to automate part of that decision, you need to go through an algorithmic impact assessment, and that's very detailed. It looks at the kind of ethical issues that you've mentioned. It looks at all kinds of things that matter, like privacy and so on, and you need that kind of tool. Because it allows you to make the kind of judgment you just mentioned. So it has happened to me that even before starting a project, we say, no, not good idea. Technically it's feasible. We can probably do this for you, but it will not pass the filter of that directive. So we should not even consider it. And by the way, that kind of policy, at least in our case in Canada, has been discussed with the public, with Canadians. I think it's going to be its fourth iteration soon. You need to have that kind of feedback from the public so that they understand exactly what you're doing or not doing, and now you're going to apply the rules internally.
Yeah.
So
yeah, thanks, Ivan. And Robin, you wanted to come back in on this one.
Yeah. So I think that participatory element Yvonne was mentioning is just interesting. I think you could do a whole podcast on that. But I'd say the key thing about ethics, I'm conscious we're here talking about productivity, and lots of people approach ethics as a burden or a blocker for doing something. Now, if you get this right, it can be an enabler, because you can give people the confidence to know that what they're doing is on the right side of your ethical principles and values. So I'd say, don't think about it like that. See it as an enabler, something that can increase your productivity.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So we have got another question in from Lucy. I think this is going back to one of the issues we talked about earlier in the discussion. So this was when we were talking about how do you calculate kind of man hours saved. Lucy's come in with a follow-up, which is how would you go about quantifying monetizing benefits of using AI, such as increased quality of work, service, or job satisfaction? So it's that broader benefits. And I think you touched on these, Robin, but I wonder if we could unpick that a little bit more for Lucy. Yvonne, you're nodding along on this one. So any advice to Lucy on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the bigger point, and I sort of alluded to that before, is that when you look at the benefits of AI from a private sector standpoint, the focus is absolutely on productivity, because the private sector really cares about that. But in the public sector, you definitely need to look at all kinds of things and not just the percentage of hours saved, because if you look at the actual scientific literature on the leading nations, what they are doing in terms of AI, how it's benefiting their citizens and so on, there are different categorizations, but productivity is just one out of 8 or 9 type of categories. There are the quality of the services you're delivering and the engagement. That's a big deal. I mentioned before situational awareness and detecting things and managing risk. I mean, this pays off. I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, some economists were estimating that it was costing in Canada $1 billion a day to deal with the pandemic. Now, we have built tools here at the NRC that help detect viruses or signs of outbreaks of different kinds, viruses or illicit drugs or other types of outbreaks. What if you can use these tools and mitigate the impact of a pandemic, like that's real benefit, that's real money at the end of the day as well. You have benefits in terms of employee satisfaction. That's a big deal. You have benefits in terms of science, benefits in terms of sustainability, which we also need to consider. I could go on and on, but at the end of the day, I think that the point that Lucy's making is that it's not just hours saved. You can do all kinds of back of the envelope calculations to figure out what are the benefits there, but don't limit yourself to that.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. And Brecht, your thoughts for Lucy on the broader benefits?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Ivan is saying. In public sectors, you can not only see it from a quantitative point of view. I think there are a lot of qualitative benefits that also there that are generating or stimulating people to think more or having more problem-solving tasks instead of those repetitive things. How do you quantify the benefits of that. Yeah, people are more happy at work, are more motivated, are also improving their skill sets. So for me, that's something that maybe is more difficult to quantify, but it is an important characteristic that one needs to take into account.
Thanks. I'm liking this because this is a very positive note, and we're getting to the end of the conversation. I am going to ask Robin and Claire their thoughts on the broader benefits of it. I think they all feed into productivity anyway, so it's a bit of a false kind of split, really. But to the audience, you've got a chance for one final, if you've got a final question or comment, now's the chance to send it in. But Claire first, and then Robin, your thoughts on how do you quantify all of the benefits maybe that would come from AI?
Yeah, so I think perhaps a different angle on Lucy's question. If our objective is to improve people's experience at work, actually one of the ways to do that is, I think I mentioned this earlier, is you're kind of taking the stress and improving people's sense of kind of value that they've delivered. Now, you should see that you could measure, lots of departments in the UK measure engagement, and happiness is a very generic term, but there are lots of surveys that measure that. So you might see it reflected there. You might also, at the other end of the scale, see it reflected in a reduced number of kind of days off sick, because I see a lot of people working in government who are working at a level where they're right on the edge. And so actually you could move people forward in terms of taking less time actually away from work. So that feels like a bit of a negative measure. It's kind of a countermeasure, but if you're reducing stress, actually you should start to see that reflected in some of those attendance measures. You have to be careful how you use those if we want to stay positive, but actually measuring it that way is a really good quantitative way of doing it.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. And Robin, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think that point Claire just mentioned is a really important one, and that well-being aspect was definitely something that we encountered in the social listening example. The sentiment analysis example I spoke to earlier. I'd say one of obviously the key thing for government is also around efficient use of taxpayers' money. So if we can do more work in-house and reach for support from external agencies or consultants, later on in the chain, we're being more effective with how we're spending our limited resources there. So that's one benefit. But on the approach to measurement, there's lots of experimental approaches that one can take, whether that's A/B or RCT trials with different user groups for the same use case, and work with them to understand the difference in either quality or quantity of work there. There's quite a lot of different approaches you can apply. And then the third and final thing I'd say is give space for unexpected benefits. In our own journey, there have been benefits we didn't even think of when we started. So just be open-minded to the new things that you will hear about.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Robin. As I said, that is, I think, a really positive kind of note on which us to end on. So I think the potential for benefits, very important. Hold on, let me just say, Grace Smith has just said, yeah, so how would you measure the user experience of newly implemented AI as part of their service? I think I mean, any of you can answer that very quickly, but I think there's a whole conversation to be had about measuring user kind of experience. But Claire, did you want, because obviously this must be something that HMRC think about a lot.
Huge, yeah. And I'd go back to where I started, which is part of the opportunity is to shift some of that kind of responsibility to create capability for citizens to self-serve. So actually, if you see people moving more neatly through a self-serve path, actually that suggests you've created an experience which is both easy to use and actually serving people's purpose.
Yeah, right. Anybody else want to come in on the user experience side of things? I'm going to take this one final question before. So this is from Brett. Could you explain what other international governments would also have into a collaborative benefit to offer? Japan, Singapore, India. I'm not quite sure. I think it's, can we learn from other governments on how they're using AI? I know Singapore are already on their second AI strategy. Robin, did you want to come in on this one?
I'll have to give it a go. The thing I have to say is engage, whether it's through the Global Government Forum, other forums, the OECD. We can all learn from what each other are doing, and no one's got this figured out completely. So I would just say engage.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say is Global Government Forum, this is a plug for ourselves. We do, so we've got well, 3 actually big global events. We do Innovation in London in March. We do Accelerate Gov in Canada in October. And we do now in May, we do Washington Government Service Delivery. And there we bring together digital leaders, and AI is very much a focus of those conversations, and sharing kind of good practice as well. So there are lots of opportunities. And then come along to more of these webinars, because we're always talking about these kind of issues. So on that note, I would like to say a huge thanks. Thank you to the audience for sending in so many great questions. I hope it did feel like a conversation with you. It certainly did from my perspective here. Thank you to our fantastic experts. So to Yvonne, to Claire, to Brett and to Robin, thanks for sharing all of your expertise and your time with us. To the audience, we have sent out a short questionnaire to you. I'd be hugely grateful if you could take just a couple of minutes to fill in that questionnaire, because it means we can continue to give you webinars on the topics that are of most use to you and of most value to you. So I'd be really grateful if you could fill that in. Thanks to SAS for being our knowledge partner today. Really good to have you here with us. To everybody who joined live today and to everyone who registered, we will send you a link with today's video, so you can watch all of it if you didn't manage to see it, or you can share it with your colleagues as well. And we will be writing up an article with the key points that were raised in today's conversation, and that will come out in a couple of weeks' time. So that just leaves me to say again, thanks so much to our panel today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, and I hope that we see you again on another one of our webinars very soon. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day wherever you are.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.